Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com, and we're here today with lesson number 17 in our incredible new tutorial series where you're going to learn Python or you're going to die trying. What I'm going to need you to do is pour yourself a nice strong cup of coffee. That is straight up black coffee, no sugar, no sweeteners, none needed. That, my friend, is go juice, and that's what you're going to need if you're going to get through this lesson. So get your coffee. I'm also going to need you to fire up your most excellent Visual Studio Code. And as you're getting that out, as always, I want to give a shout out to you guys who are helping me out over at Patreon. It is your encouragement and your support that keeps this great content coming. Those of you who are not helping out yet, look down in the description. There is a link over to my Patreon account. Think about hopping on over there and hooking a brother up. But enough of this shameless self-promotion. Let's jump in and talk about what we're going to do today. Now, in last week's lesson, lesson 16, I taught you how to write functions in Python. And then what your assignment was to go back to that earlier program where we input grades, we printed the grades, we averaged the grades, and then we found the high and low grade and printed those out, and go back and redo that. But instead of one big long program, break it into logical chunks and write a more modular program using Python functions. How many of you were able to do it? If you were, put a comment down below. I am legend. If you weren't, you could say I folded up like a cheap Walmart lawn chair. That was like IWFCWLC. You could put the abbreviation if you wanted to save yourself some embarrassment. But guys, it's okay if you didn't get it done. It's just I want you to struggle and try and tussle with it and wrestle with it, and then just finally you just can't do it. And then if you watch me, then you'll really learn something, because you'll see how I got around maybe some of the problems that you had. But if you just sit and watch me do it, you don't learn anything, because it looks easy when I do it, but then you cannot do anything without me sitting there and you just doing it along with me. Okay, so I really need you to try your best to do these homeworks and get as much of them done as you can and get as many of them right as you can. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to my Visual Studio Code, and that would be right there. And I will get out of your way. We'll come over here and go to our Python files folder and make a new file, and I will call it function, functHW.py. The .py is kind of important, and boom, we got ourselves a fresh new Python program just waiting to be written. All right, now I am going to probably just start with the code, and then I will move up back to the top to put the functions in, because the functions do have to be in the top. And the first thing that we're going to need to know from the user is how many grades are there. So I'm going to say that's num grades, and that is going to be equal to the number of grades would be an integer, because it's always going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. You wouldn't have 4.5 grades, so we're going to make it an int. And then we are going to input, and I'm going to move this out of your way so you can see more. Int input, and then we're going to open input and say how many grades, question mark space, and then we close that string, then we close that input, and then we close that int. All right, so now I know how many grades. Well, what I need to do is I need to input the grades. So I'm going to say my grades is going to be equal to input grades. Okay, so this input grades is going to be the function that goes out and gets the grades from the user. Well, what does he need to know? He needs to know num grades. So I'm going to tell the function, I need you to get this many grades. So in the main program, I figured out how many grades there are going to be, and then I go to my grades and I'm going to input that. And so then I need to return the array that has all the grades in them, and then that array will go into my grades. So the only thing that my grades really is going to need to know is it's only going to need to know how many grades you want. So now I'm going to come up and I'm going to define that function. How do we define a function? DEF turns the happy little color because it recognizes it. And then I need to call it input grades. This is the name of the function. And then what do I need? Well, I'm just going to put NM, or I'll just say NM for numbers. That's how many numbers there's going to be. And then out here I need to put who? Our friend Mr. Colon, our old friend Mr. Colon. And now what do I need to do here? Well, for I in range, and I want to start at 0, and then I want to go all the way to NM, but I want to stop one before NM because I'm starting at 0, which means if I go to NM, range does stop one before NM. We have gone over that ad nauseum in the past, and we're going to increment each time through by 1. And then again, our friend Mr. Colon, and then I'm just going to say GRD is equal to input. And then what am I going to input? I'm going to say, please enter your grade, like that. Okay. And then grade is going to be a float because you might have a 92.5. You wouldn't want to make it an int because it might be the in-between numbers. So I'll say float. I'm going to float it, and then I've got to come out to the end and close that float. So I close the string, I close the input, and now I need to close the float like that. Okay. Now, what do I do with GRD? I need to put it in an array, and I'll just call that array grades. And grades, what I want to do with grades, I want to append to grades. And then what do I want to append? I want to append GRD. Now notice if you're calling a function, you use the parentheses, but if you're indexing an array, you use the square brackets. But here, even though we're talking about grades, we're not indexing grades, we're appending, which is a function, which is why we use the round brackets there. Okay, so now it should have it. Now the problem is I'm appending GRD to grades, but I haven't defined it yet. So before I go into that for loop, I just need to create grades and create it as an empty array. All right, so now at the end of this for loop, I do believe that I should have the grades array ready. So what do? I return, and what do I want to return? I want to return grades. Now I don't need to return NM because the program down here, the main program, already knows what numGrades is. It already knows what numGrades is, so I don't need to return that to numGrades because it already knows. So I'm going to return grades, and then where will it end up? It will end up in my grades. So this grades array that the function is passing back is going to be caught in the main program in the array myGrades. And so now let's just run this. It's not going to do anything, but let's just see if it'll crash. And so it says how many grades, and we are going to say 3 grades, and then I'm going to say 90, 91, 92. Now, why would I get a bad grade? If you're watching this, why would I get a bad grade? Because I didn't put a space after grade, and that looks kind of cheesy. Good news is it didn't crash. So on please enter your grade, I need to format that a little better. I'll put our friend Mr. Colon in a space, and that way as you're inputting the data, it will look a little nicer. Let's be neat and tidy as we code, okay? We need a neater, tidier world. So let's be neat and tidy as we code. All right, so now I should have the grades in. And so now let's print the grades. And so what I'm going to say is I'm going to say print, and then I'm going to say your grades are, colon, space. And then what do I want to do? I want to print grades. And then what do I want to print? My grades. So I'm going to create a new function, print grades, and then I'm going to print my grades with it. Okay, now I want you to see I didn't say anything equal to print grades because print grades is not going to return anything to me. It's not going to change anything. It's just going to do the print function for an array. Okay, now it's going to need my grades, and what else is it going to need? It's going to need to know how many are in there. So I'm going to need numGrades. And let's make sure, yeah, numGrades is what the main program is calling it, and myGrades. So I'm going to pass it numGrades so it knows how many there are, and then myGrades. Now there's a function you could actually do that would give you the length of myGrades, but I just like to kind of keep a variable and just pass it rather than getting too fancy. I've seen more disasters from programmers trying to be too fancy. Okay, if I'm going to call print grades, I better define it. And so I will come here, and then it's a new function, so I've got to go all the way back. I don't want to put this function inside the other function, so I'm going to say define, and it turns the happy little color, print grades. Okay, and then what do I need? I'm just going to call it nm and x, right? I mean, why not just call it nm and x? And then who did we forget? Our friend Mr. Colon. And now what am I going to do? I'm going to say for I in range. So I'm going to step through x. So for I in range, I'm going to start at 0 and go to nm, which was the number of grades, and then I'm going to go in steps of 1, right, like that. So it's going to step through the X array, and it's going to go all the way to the numbers of grades in X, and it's going to increment 1 each time. And then what are we going to do? We're just going to do a print, and then what do we want to print? We want to print X of I, like that. Okay, so this is just going to step through X, and it's going to print each one of those. And we're not returning anything because this function, all it does is just prints an array for us. Kind of a handy little function to have. All right, so let's, I'm going to make this a little bigger, make sure you guys can see it. And then I'm going to come up here and run it. And then down here, it says how many grades. And so I'm going to say 5. And so then it says, please enter your grade. I'm going to say 95, 94, 93, 92, and 91. And boom, look at that. Let me show you. Okay, so your grades are, and then it goes 95, 94, 93, 92, 91. Boom. All right, guys, we're getting this. We are getting this. Okay, so we were supposed to, what all were we supposed to do? We were supposed to input the grades and print the grades. Then we were supposed to average the grades. Okay, and so we do my grades, which gets the grades, or input grades, which gets the grades, then we print the grades. Now what we want to do is we want to average the grades. So I'm going to say AVG. So I'm going to return from the function, I'm going to return the average. So I need to catch it. So I'm going to catch it in AVG. And then the function I'm going to call average grades. And then what is it going to need? Well, it's going to need to know how many grades there are. So num grades again, and then it needs my grades. If it's going to average them, it's going to need them. Okay, so average is going to be average grades of num grades, my grades. Okay, so now we need a new function, and that new function, def, is going to be average grades. And then what is it going to do? Let's just do nm and x again, okay, because these things might be averaging who knows what. So I'll just call it nm and x. And then who do we need here? Our friend Mr. Colon. And then we're going to come back over here. And now we need to sum all of those up. So I'll have a variable called total and set it to 0, just so that's kind of the bucket I'm going to be adding all the numbers into. And then I'm going to say for I in range. And where do we start? We start at 0. Then we're going to go to nm, which is the number of grades. And the range function will stop 1 before nm, which we want because we're starting to count at 0. And then we have 1. And then who do we need here for a for loop? Again, our friend Mr. Colon. And then we're going to come here and we are going to say total is equal to total plus, okay, so whatever we had before, we're going to add to it the next grade, which is going to be the variable x, because that's what we passed it into up here. We passed our my grades array into this array x, and that's going to be x sub I, like that. So total is equal to total plus x sub I. Then I come down here. Do I want to divide by the total number, like the number of grades? Do I want to divide by the number of grades inside the loop or outside the loop? Well, do I want to divide by the total n times or only one time? Only one time, so we don't want it in the loop. So we're going to say average, average is equal to what? It's equal to the total divided by NM, which is the number of grades, right? Now what we need to do, what is that nonsense? How did my cursor end up there? I don't know. Okay, now what do we need to do? We need to return what? Average. Return average. And now when I call average grades, you're going to return average. And then down here, you're going to return average. Who's going to catch it? Mr. AVG is going to catch it. So now AVG has the average. And so now what I can do is I can print your average is, and then a comma, and then print AVG. All right, so let's try this. Let's run this. Okay, how many grades? Let's say 5 grades. And then we're going to say 90, 91, 93, 84, and 92, like that. Okay, boom, 90, 91, 93, 84, 92, and your average is 90. All right, boom, guys. I kind of want to check that. So I'll take 90. I'm 1 above. I'm 4. I kind of can average things just by sight. So how are we around 90? Well, I'm 4 above. I am 6 below. So that would be 2 below, and then 2 above would take me back to 90. So yeah, those things would average to 90. Let's try it again. I want to see what happens if I get like a non-integer number. And so we're going to run this thing again. And then it says how many grades? 3. And I'm going to go 90, 91, and 93. Okay, and the answer is 91.33333333, and I don't like that formatting very much, so I'm going to trim this down a little bit. So on this average, I'm going to round average, and so notice I'm opening that up. I'm going to round average, and I'm going to round it to 1 decimal point. So it'll be like 91.3, and that should be good enough. So let's try this again. We're going to come down here. Whoa! Line 23, what did that not like? Oh, I didn't close. I closed my round, but then I still need to close the print. All right, so we'll come over here, and how many grades? We'll say 3, and then I'll say 90, and then I'll say 91, and then I will say 93, and the average is 91.3. Boom. Okay, this is looking pretty cool, isn't it? This is really working. So we've done almost the whole homework assignment. We need to find the high and the low grade. So we are going to make another array to do that. Also, I think I'm going to start by just printing a blank line, a few blank lines in here. So after you have my grades and then it prints your grades are, I'm going to just print a blank line here, and you can do that with just open close quotes like that. And then after you print your grades, then I'm going to print another blank line, and then average num grades your average is. And now what I need to do is I need to find the high low. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to kind of do it with one function, and so I'm going to return the high grade and the low grade. So I need to have 2 variables to catch that, anticipating I'm going to be passing 2 variables from the function back and to the call. So I'm going to say high G and low G, and that is going to be equal to high low. And what does high low need to know? It needs to know how many grades there are, so it knows how long to step through it, and then it needs my grades again. All right, and so now we need to do high low. So we're going to come up here and we are going to say define high low, and then what does he need? Well, let's just call it NM and X. I'm just trying to show you, you don't have to use the same variable names, all right? Who's your friend? Your friend is Mr. Colon. And then what do I need to do? Well, I need to go for I in range. We'll start at 0. We will step through NM, and we will go one at a time. It will stop one before because we're starting at 0, and now that's going to input them. And now what I also need to do, I need to initialize my high G and low G. So I'll say HG. I want to initialize the high grade to 0, and I want to initialize the low grade equal 100. And now, my friend, this HG and LG are becoming colors, which probably mean they are a special word, and so a special variable, so we better not use those. I'll just say high G and then low G. All right, and now I'm going to step through these, and if X, which is our variable, and I like to put this like this, if X of I is less than low G, what do? If X of I is less than low G, we have a new loser. So now all of a sudden that new loser, low G, is going to be equal to X sub I. All right? Now, what else do I need to look for? If X sub I is greater than, if X sub I is greater than what? High grade, high G, what are we going to do there? Well, then high G, we have a new winner, is equal to X sub I. That X sub I becomes the winner. All right? Now, that should give us the high grade and low grade. So what do we need to do now? We need to return high G and low G. Now, we better make sure we got the order right there. So I come down here. Yeah, it's going to get high G, low G, so it's got them in the right order. So that should work. Man, could it really be this easy? At least it's easy when you're watching me. Can you do it on your own? All right, so here we go. And so now we're going to run this thing, and let's see what we've got here. We're going to say four grades. Click down here. Let me go Control plus, and then let me kind of show you where the action is down here. All right, let me clear this and then run it again. Okay, how many grades? We're going to say 4. And then we are going to say 90, and then we're going to say 91, and then we're going to say 97, and then we are going to say 82. All right, let's look at this. So it says your grades are 90, 91, 97, 82. Your average is 90, and we are denied. You know what we did? We returned them, but we didn't print them. So we need to say print, and we need to say your high grade is, like that. And then we're going to comma high G. We're going to comma high G, and then we're going to copy this. We're going to paste it, Control V, and then your low grade is over here, low G. Okay, low G, like that. All right, so we did it last time, but we didn't print it out. So let's take a look now. Let me kill this, and then let me run it up here. Okay, how many grades? We're going to say 5 grades. We're going to say 90, we're going to say 91, we're going to say 82, we're going to say 87, and we're going to say 99. Okay, 90, 91, 82, 87, 99. Your average is 89.8. Your high grade is 99, and your low grade is 82. Who is your Huckleberry? I'm your Huckleberry. Did you guys get it done? Okay, guys, if this is a lot of fun. If you guys really tried and were not able to do it on your own, that's okay. It's called learning. But you've got to not just be happy, oh yeah, I saw him do it, so I know how to do it now. If you were not able to do it on your own until you watch me, you need to turn this video off. You need to start with a blank program. And now you need to do the whole thing by yourself without watching me do it. So best of all, are you legend guys who do it before you see me do it? But if you're kind of like folded up the first time, get up, dust yourself off, but don't just move on to the next video. You've got to do this by yourself without watching me do it. Okay, does that sound fair? All right, so that's your homework. Is you guys that could not do it by yourself, go back and do it by yourself, starting from scratch without looking at this. And then I do believe next week, I think what we're going to do next week is we're going to look at classes and methods. And this is something that if you've ever looked at a Python program, it is just totally confusing. The real pros who write Python, they do it with classes. And if you haven't learned classes, it's just like looking at a jigsaw puzzle. It makes no sense. Well, what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you how to program in classes with very simple programs, and then you're going to understand how that class method business worked. It's called object-oriented programming. I'm going to kind of show you how to do object-oriented programming with classes, and then when you look at the code written by the big boys, you can understand what they're doing, and it will make a lot of sense to you. It's really very simple, but if you just haven't seen it before, you look at someone's code and it's class.init.self.this.that. It's very confusing. We're going to make sense of it next week. Hey, are you guys having as much fun with these lessons as I am? I really love making these things, and I hope you guys will enjoy it. I really love Python. We got some exciting stuff coming up. I plan on merging Python with Arduino, where you're taking data from the Arduino, but you're controlling it with Python. And then we're going to get into some really cool 3D graphics and a bunch of really slick stuff. So I hope you guys will stick with this, because we're going to get to some very serious and very cool project-based lessons coming up in the not too distant future. Okay guys, this has been Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com. If you guys like these lessons, give us a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you hit the subscribe button, ring that bell when you do that, so you'll get notifications when our next lessons are coming out. And think about sharing this on your social media so we have more people doing something useful like coding and less people sitting around watching silly cat videos. Talk to you guys later.